We are doing lesson number 5 in the quarterly rebellion and redemption, and the title this week is The Controversy Continues. The Controversy Continues. And the first paragraph says, when we compare the lives of David, Elijah, Hezekiah, Esther, and Nehemiah, similar themes surface. God is able to use insignificant people to turn back the tide of evil. Through some of these accounts, we see that despite tremendous obstacles, we don't need to buckle under overwhelming evil. Well, I wanted to break this out. Let's break it out a little bit. First off, what does it mean to buckle? See, if we do the things in here, we're not going to buckle. Give in. So would it mean things like this? To disobey an explicit instruction found in Scripture. Oh, I don't know, like David using the showbread to feed his men. Did he buckle? Does it mean saying no to God? Would that be buckling, saying no to God? You know, the parable of the 2 sons that Jesus said, and the first son said, no, I'm not going to go out and work in your field. But then he did. But he told him no. Was he buckling? Or to lie. Rahab. When she lied to hide the spies, during that lying, was she buckling? Does it mean to question God? So Moses, when he questioned God about destroying Israel, or Abraham when he questioned God about destroying Sodom, were they buckling? You know, I ask these questions because I want us to think, what does actual buckling look like? What actually is it? I think it means to betray one's loyalty to God and give in to fear and selfishness. To make selfish choices at the expense of God and others. So Moses, when he struck the rock, buckled. Elijah, when he ran away, buckled. David with Bathsheba, and then later, even worse, with Uriah, buckled. Abraham lying about his wife, buckled. Peter denying Christ, buckled. What was the cause of the buckling? Why would people buckle? Why would these people that were champions, what was the underlying reason for their buckling?
Fear.
Fear. There it is. It's this infection. As soon as Adam and Eve sinned, they ran and hid because they were afraid. How many of you chose to be born with fear and insecurity? We are born this way, born in sin. This is an infection from our birth. We don't need to feel bad for having it. We need to recognize and own that it's there, and recognize that if we give into it, it's hurtful to us. So what does it that actually undermines our trust in God? Do you think those who war the most effectively against God are the people who deny He exists? Or the people who war most effectively against God are people who proclaim He exists?
But deny the power thereof.
Yes. You know, the people that are the most effective in obstructing God's cause are typically not those who deny God exists. They're the ones who believe in God, but they believe in such a perverted and distorted view of God that the God that they promote corrupts themselves and then corrupts in the community they influence the view of God. Talks about the power of God, enables us to stand firm. What is the power of God that enables us to stand firm? See, when I read this passage, it really seemed to speak to our fear and insecurity through the human survival of the fittest drive that the Israelites were seeking 2,000 years ago when Christ came. And what were they seeking 2,000 years ago in a Messiah? Somebody who was powerful, who could destroy the Romans, who could resurrect their dead armies, who could feed their armies with just a few fishes and loaves. Okay, they were looking for someone with power, physical might and power. That's what they were looking for. And this it seems to appeal to our need. We want someone strong, someone powerful. It makes us feel safe. Romans 1:16, though, speaks of a different type of power. It says, I'm not ashamed of the gospel, because it is the power of God for the salvation of everyone who believes. The gospel's the power of God. What is that? What is the power of the gospel? How do you avail yourself of that power? Is the power of the gospel, which is often taught, that God is the creator, And therefore he's stronger and he's mightier and he's coming back with a rod of iron, and one day he'll do just what the Jews wanted 2,000 years ago. It just wasn't the right time. All things in time and place. And when he comes this time, he'll do what the Jews wanted. He'll kill all his enemies and he's going to rule them with a rod of iron. So we can have peace and security and knowing we've got a powerful God coming to kill the people who do us wrong. Is that the power of the gospel? No. Do you know that's a very common view of Christianity? It's very commonly taught. This is from a book called Desire of Ages, 759. Think of this in light of the question of power. What do you understand the power of the gospel, the power of God's kingdom to be? Rebellion was not to be overcome by force. Compelling power is found only under Satan's government.
Amen.
The Lord's principles are not of this order. His authority rests upon goodness, mercy, and love. And the presentation of these principles is the means to be used. God's government is moral, and truth and love are to be the prevailing power. Amen. When you think of the power, when I read this first paragraph in the lesson, and you're thinking of the power of God that lets us not buckle and stand firm in the face of, are you thinking of the power of truth and love, or are you thinking of something else? How are truth and love prevailing powers? Or let me put it this way. What is it that truth prevails over? And where would truth have the prevailing impact? Where is the place that truth impacts you?
Our hearts.
Hearts and minds, okay? So then you go take this, hope your computers are going, you go, whoa, that reminds me of 2 Corinthians 10, 3-5. We're in a war. They don't wage war like the world does. The weapons have divine power to demolish strongholds, and we demolish arguments and pretensions that set themselves up against the knowledge of God and take captive every thought. Oh, what's that power? It's the power of truth, which destroys lies and wins distrust. And then the power of, what does love prevail over?
Selfishness.
All of those. Actually, perfect love casts out all fear, and fear drives us to look out for who? Self. So it's all connected. Fear and selfishness are always held together. The more fearful you get, the more self-referenced you get, the more selfish you act, actually the more fear you engender in yourself. When you act selfishly, you don't rid yourself of fear. People who are hoarders, and the more they hoard, then the more they fear they're going to lose. And why are they hoarding? Because they're afraid they won't have. The more you give, the less fear that you have. Satan's power is lies, and thus, as the Bible says, Hebrews 2, that by his death he destroyed him who holds the power of death, that is the devil. Devil's power of death. What's the power of death? Many people still think in these terms of physical coercive power. No, life eternal, John 17:3, life eternal, biblical math. We're going to do Bible math now. Biblical math, life eternal is what? To know God or knowing God. Well, if eternal life equals knowing God, then what does eternal death equal? Not knowing God. So Satan's power then is the lies that he tells about God that we believe that prevent us from knowing him. That's his power. Christ's death destroyed that power. How does Christ's death destroy that power? Because if you see me, you've seen the Father. The Father and I are one. And Christ had all power, physical power, as the creator power at his disposal. He could have accessed it had he wanted. But what do we learn? There's an old saying in human culture, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts? Absolutely. And we see that, don't we see it in human history? But Christ had all power at his disposal. John 13, he was given all authority, all power. But what did he do with the power? What do we learn at the cross? Even when he's being coerced and tortured, he doesn't use power self-centeredly to save himself. Thus, he destroys the lies of Satan. He destroys those lies. And we see, whoa, God's not like that. God is exactly the opposite of what Satan says he is. Satan's power is destroyed. How is love power? Remember this example we've given many times, but it kind of brings it home. You're crossing the street, and as you step out in the street, a truck is about to hit you. What emotion do you experience? Fear. You're out with your firstborn child, who's maybe 3 years of age, and you get distracted. And before you know it, your toddler's toddled out in the street. A truck is about to hit your toddler, and there's just enough time. If you act now, you can shove your child out of the way, but if you do, you get hit. What do? You shove your child out of the way. And when you see your child hit the grass on the other side, and you know your child is safe, what emotion do you experience now? Joy. Really? Wait a second, you're getting hit by a truck. Notice, in both circumstances, you're getting hit by a truck. In the first, there's only fear. In the second, your love has cast out your fear. Love is the only power that actually can free us from this self-reference. We have to come to love God and others more than self. Then we have something beyond ourselves that's worthy of surrendering ourselves for and to. Yes?